What police found inside this ordinary apartment is the most disturbing crime scene you will ever hear about. A blue puppet was the only witness to 7 bodies hidden in plain sight. The reason this life-taker was almost executed will shock you. You have to see the unbelievable twist at the end that kept him alive. It was August in Philadelphia, the kind of summer where the air thickens into something unbreathable, where trash cooks on sidewalks and the alleys sweat rot. But this was worse. This was human. Neighbors argued over the source. Maybe spoiled meat, maybe a clogged drain pipe, maybe a cat caught in the walls. None wanted to imagine the truth. The landlord, already tired of missed rent and constant complaints, finally forced the lock at 1811 North 19th Street. He stepped into a nightmare no imagination could have summoned. Garbage stacked high, furniture broken into splinters, spoiled food rotting in corners, air heavy and damp as if the room itself had drowned. But filth was not what drove hardened police officers back into the hallway gagging. It was the bodies. 7 women, each in varying states of decay, stuffed under mattresses, pressed into closets, reduced by heat and time to something unrecognizable. And on top of it all, smiling grotesquely through the carnage, sat a blue puppet with wide, unblinking eyes. That puppet belonged to Harrison Frank Graham, the man who had once been just another face in Philadelphia's shadows. A skinny, quiet man limping through life, known more for oddness than menace. Born on September 9, 1959, he had grown up in North Philadelphia long before crack, a legal substance, turned its streets into war zones. His childhood was unremarkable in its neglect. The oldest of 5 children, he retreated inward, his teachers branding him slow, his IQ never climbing beyond the bare minimum of functional. He avoided eye contact, avoided speech, and when forced, sometimes let the puppet speak for him. Mr. Cookie, as he called it, became a mask, a comfort, a mouthpiece for the thoughts he could not form. Children laughed at him, adults pitied or ignored him, and slowly, Harrison Frank Graham vanished from their notice. He slipped out of school without goodbyes, faded into back streets and quiet apartments, swallowed by the city's indifference. Drugs soon replaced purpose. First pills to dull the noise, then another illegal substance to blot out the hours, and eventually crack, a legal substance to obliterate everything. His disability checks became rocks and smoke, traded quickly, consumed faster. And in that haze, something inside him fractured. He found himself drawn to places where the forgotten disappeared, where addicts sought shelter, where the only currency was desperation. He rented a 3rd-floor apartment at 1811 North 19th Street, a building so neglected it mirrored his own collapse. The windows were nailed shut, garbage piled high. The walls absorbed every scream and every silence. It was here that his descent became irreversible. The women who stepped inside did not come by force. They came because he offered what little he had: a floor to sleep on, a hit to share, a space to disappear. Many were commercial intimacy workers. Many battled the same addiction. Many were already invisible to the world. His soft, almost childlike voice disarmed them. Sometimes Mr. Cookie spoke before he did, a grotesque introduction to a man who seemed odd but harmless. But once the high faded and reality pressed in, Harrison Frank Graham revealed what lay beneath that soft facade. He unalived them, sometimes with his hands, sometimes with a rope, sometimes with cords scavenged from broken lamps. Always after getting high, always in that sealed, suffocating room. And he did not move them. That was the part that stunned investigators most. He simply lived among the dead. He slept beside them, stepped over them, lit candles against the smell, sprayed air freshener, blasted disco music to drown out the flies. Time did not stop in that apartment. It festered. The names of the women deserved to be spoken, though so often they were lost in reports and forgotten in the years that followed. Barbara Mahoney, 22 years old, was among the dead. Robin Descaiza, once his girlfriend, partially wrapped in a blanket, legs protruding from beneath a mattress, her silence explained away with the words, "She got loud, and Mr. Cookie didn't like it." Sandra Garvin, crammed into a closet so tightly her knees shattered inward. electrical cords still wound around wrists and ankles. Cynthia Brooks, missing for over 6 months, decomposed so completely into the floorboards, heat and time transforming her into something between flesh and fossil. And the 7th, dismembered, scattered, legs and torso in a duffel bag on the rooftop. A woman without a name, denied even the dignity of recognition. For months, neighbors heard muffled conversations through the walls, assuming Graham had guests. They did not realize he was speaking to corpses or to the puppet in his hand. The stench grew unbearable, yet still no one forced their way in until August of 1987. By then, Harrison Frank Graham had already vanished, slipping down the fire escape like a shadow escaping its body. He did not flee far. Days later, he walked calmly into a police station and confessed. He told them where to find the keys, admitted there were bodies, said he did not understand why he did it. The women upset Mr. Cookie, he explained. Then he handed over the puppet, as if surrendering it absolved him of the acts it had witnessed. What followed was a trial where madness and malice fought for dominance. His attorneys painted him as a man with the mind of a child, a broken soul incapable of understanding. His IQ, tested at 63, was placed before the jury like a shield. His mannerisms, flat and emotionless, suggested detachment rather than cruelty. Yet the photographs shattered any plea for pity. Jurors saw women bound, twisted, decomposed. They saw the filth, the candles, the air freshener bottles lined like feudal soldiers against death. They listened as detectives described stepping into a room where the living had shared space with the dead for weeks. And they listened to Graham's own words, spoken without inflection, describing how he wanted peace, how the women grew mean, how Mr. Cookie disliked the yelling. The jury was unmoved. In 1988, Harrison Frank Graham was sentenced to 6 death penalties and 1 life term. The courtroom fell into silence when the verdict was read, a silence heavier than outcry, the silence of something too monstrous for words. Graham sat still, eyes half closed, disconnected, as though judgment belonged to someone else. Yet even in conviction, the system faltered in knowing what to do with him. For 15 years, his case wound through appeals. Psychiatrists debated whether he was insane. Lawyers argued whether childlike intellect absolved him of adult crimes. Could a man with the mind of an 8-year-old truly grasp death? Could such a man be executed? In 2002, the U.S. Supreme Court answered. In Atkins versus Virginia, they declared it unconstitutional to execute the intellectually disabled. Harrison Frank Graham qualified, barely. His death sentences were commuted. In 2003, he was resentenced to life in prison without parole. For the families of the women, the news came in the form of brief phone calls or terse letters. Their daughters, sisters, mothers were still gone, the life taker still breathing. For some, life in prison was a mercy. For others, it was an insult. But the world had moved on. Other life takers filled headlines. Harrison Frank Graham slipped quietly into obscurity behind prison walls. Now in his mid-60s, he remains in SCI Phoenix, a maximum security prison. Guards describe him as docile, detached, humming disco songs under his breath. He receives the occasional visit from social workers or lawyers, but family is gone, friends non-existent. Mr. Cookie is long destroyed, yet his memory clings like the smell once clung to that apartment. One guard put it simply, "You wouldn't believe he did what he did until you remember what was found in that room." The apartment no longer exists. Condemned within weeks, demolished years later, it is now nothing but a fenced-off patch of weeds and broken bottles, forgotten land in a forgotten street. Yet the story refuses to vanish. It lingers in court documents, resurfaces in podcasts, returns in whispers of the puppet, the stench, the 7 women left to rot in the company of a man who called himself harmless. And so Harrison Frank Graham lives on, not in the headlines, not in infamy, but in the quiet dread that some monsters do not announce themselves with violence or fury. Some smile through a puppet's mouth, shuffle quietly through hallways, and hide horror in plain sight until the smell betrays them. In the end, the story of Harrison Frank Graham is not only about a life taker, but about the silence of a city that did not see, or chose not to see until it was too late. Now that you've heard the story of Harrison Frank Graham, what do you make of a city that ignored the stench for so long? Do you believe his intellect excused him or deepened the horror of what he did? Should his sentence have remained death, or was life imprisonment the right decision? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more.